Welcome back to Epic Stories. Today's story is rather unusual. In the West, there is a concept known as malicious compliance. This involves an employee strictly adhering to instructions, requirements, or rules at work, fully aware that it will lead to negative consequences for the employer or the creator of those rules. Importantly, the person formally does not break any rules, but uses them against those who established them. Today's story is a case of malicious compliance. Now, to the story titled, Fire Me! Here's how I used malicious compliance to get paid for doing nothing all year while working for competitors and getting paid by both employers. This story is quite lengthy, but I hope you find it worth your time. Setting: the office of a small company providing plumbing services for residential and commercial properties. We work 6 days a week plus emergency calls during off hours and Sundays. 3 employees in the office handle technician dispatch, billing, order planning, components, and so on. We all have the same skill set and back each other up. Personnel details: technically, we were all hired as dispatchers. Administrative tasks such as payroll calculation, management of accounts receivable and payable, and marketing are carried out at the company's head office, which has 2 more branches like ours. As for our team, I am a man in my 30s, single, without children, very flexible schedule. I've been almost 30 years a single mother raising 3 kids, often missing days due to maternal duties, doctor visits, school meetings, etc. Howard is an old-timer, so old it seems like he helped build Noah's Arkansas. He has even older parents with dementia and an arrangement with his sister about their care. He lives with his ancestors from Friday to Sunday and works from Monday to Thursday. On weekends, he is unavailable under any circumstances. His sister lives with the parents from Monday to Thursday. Howard doesn't need the job, but if he left, his sister would shift some of her duties onto him, which he really doesn't want. So, Howard would come to work at 6 a.m. and work until 2:30 p.m. from Monday to Thursday. Ashley would come in and work from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. from Monday to Friday. In the morning, she would send her kids to school and leave early to pick them up. On weekends, she worked remotely from home. She also came to work at 6 a.m. on Fridays, as Howard did not work at this time. I would come in at 11 a.m., work until 7:30 p.m. from Monday to Friday, and was on call during off hours for emergencies. My workday started so late because it was specified in my contract. We discussed this beforehand, which suited me as I liked to sleep in. For several years, we worked perfectly fine until Ashley spoiled everything. One of Ashley's duties was to check and submit time sheets for payroll, and the head office noticed that one of the technicians consistently received more hours than others. It turned out that Ashley was having an affair with one of the plumbers and inflated his hours on the timesheet. This all came to light when a client called about a warranty issue on work done, but we could not find any records of it in our system. The client insisted that our technician had come and that the lady on the phone had mentioned a 20% cash discount. Emails were sent to the head office, GPS data from the car was checked, and their little scheme was exposed. She was inflating Nick's hours, and they were making money on side jobs for cash over the weekends. Both were fired for violations and dishonesty, leaving Ashley with 3 kids, no job, and no unemployment benefits. Now only Howard and I remained. HR and the company owner called us in for a meeting and explained that Ashley no longer worked there. We agreed on a temporary work arrangement until a third person was found for the team. Howard continued his usual schedule from Monday to Thursday, staying until 4 p.m. on Mondays and Tuesdays. He pre-scheduled late calls, which we tried to avoid. On these days, calls during off hours were taken by the head plumber. My work schedule was from Wednesday to Sunday. On Fridays, I started work at 8 a.m. and worked until the end of the day. On Thursday, I planned the morning calls for the plumbers and also took calls outside of work hours from Wednesday to Sunday. We were assured this was a temporary arrangement until a replacement for Ashley was found. Since there were only two of us, neither Howard nor I could take a vacation, as there was no one to cover for us. On September 1st, enter Swine. Swine was brought in to handle the administrative issues that, frankly, had gotten a bit out of control when it was just Howard and me in the office. Things like missing orders for components, missing invoices, incomplete income reports, etc. We were too busy just trying to keep things running with a staff shortage to handle this. We were also informed that Swine would be substituting for the dispatcher if needed. He was a real jerk, entering the office with the statement that he had been brought in to whip us into shape. I couldn't stand him from the start. Abrasive, aggressive, with a vocabulary full of profanity, just an idiot. But fine, let him handle the external affairs, negotiate with suppliers, order components, manage the fleet maintenance, and all that crap. He also handled the time sheets for payroll and reported to the head office. Fine by me. And if I have to endure his nonsense for a couple of hours 3 days a week, so be it. We worked in the same room with him only from Wednesday to Friday from 11 a.m. to 5 p.m. when he left. I could tolerate that. I requested a vacation twice after he arrived, and both times I was denied. It is worth noting that my contract specified 3 weeks of vacation per year, and up until his arrival, I had taken only 2 days of vacation in the spring. Fast forward to the end of November, if anything, Swine was getting worse. He really got on my nerves, and I was on the edge. I have a bit of a temper problem, and it was getting harder and harder to restrain myself from beating him up. And then the last straw, I looked at my payroll statement and saw that I was missing 5 hours. I not only get paid for the hours I work according to the schedule, but also for the time I spend on emergency calls after work hours. Usually, I clock about 46 to 50 hours a week with overtime pay after 44 hours. These missing 5 hours were overtime. I went to Swine on Friday, the day of payroll, and asked for an explanation. He replied that he had been instructed to cut overtime, and if I checked my email, I would see a directive stating that under no circumstances should anyone in this office work overtime. This clearly only worked against me, as Howard worked only 38 hours a week and did not take on duty. But why am I missing 5 hours? In the timesheets, I deducted 30 minutes from each day for a lunch break, but I don't take lunch. I just eat a sandwich at my desk. It doesn't matter. According to the law, I can deduct 30 minutes from each of your workdays as unpaid break time. But I actually worked those hours. Seriously? You're deducting time for breaks I didn't take? It's all legal. If you don't like it, go to the labor inspectorate. I don't have time for this nonsense. Get back to your damn chair and do your damn job. Fine, motherfucker. Now you'll be kaput. Be whatever jerk you want, but touching my money, you'll pay for that. I'll get back at you. I have a good friend, Eric, who I've known since school days. He's a lawyer at one of the city's top law firms. On Sunday evening, I invited him out for a beer and wings and asked if his firm handles such cases. You'd be surprised how much advice you can get for a few pieces of chicken and some beer. On Monday, I drove across town to a store and bought a gadget. They're quite easy to get. Just look at a spy shop or search on marketplaces. I didn't have to tinker with it much. After 10 minutes, Swine burst into the parking lot and demanded explanations. What the hell am I doing? Having lunch, I replied. The phones are ringing off the hook. Jeff needs to process a payment by credit card, and Mike is just finishing his call. I want you to come back to the office immediately. Sorry, Swine. If you're not paying me for my break time, then I'm not working. Either you handle this, or I'll be back in, checking the timer on my phone, 17 minutes. After that, I rolled up the window in the car and drove off. It was wonderful. Swine turned red and stormed back into the office. When I returned, he demanded an explanation. What the hell did I think I was doing? I have the right to a 30-minute unpaid break. You're deducting time from my timesheet, so now I'm taking my break. I have the right to it, all legal. He couldn't find a response, and I returned to my desk. 5 minutes later, I received an email instructing me to take breaks before 2 p.m. so I could return to my desk before Howard left. I responded to his email, CCING the company owner and HR. In my response, I explained that I couldn't do that because, according to labor laws, I am not entitled to a lunch break until 5 hours into my shift. Therefore, I will continue to take my break at 4 p.m. for 30 minutes. I even inserted a paragraph from the Labor Inspectorate's website to support my position. He came into my office and scolded me for a long time, but I didn't give in. I told him it's all legal. If you have a problem with that, go to the Labor Inspectorate. On Thursday, right after Swine left work, I sent him an email again, adding a blind copy to the owner and HR. In it, I agreed to change my working hours on a temporary basis until a third person was found for the office. I also agreed to continue working those hours until the new person was up to speed. But since Swine was already well versed in the situation, I now withdrew my consent to change my work schedule, and, starting Monday, I would return to the schedule specified in my contract. On Friday, I came to work at 11 a.m., and Swine was already waiting for me with a printout of the email. HR and the owner called me. What the hell was going on? When I was hired, my schedule was specified in the contract from Monday to Friday from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. This schedule was changed only by verbal agreement. Well, I'm withdrawing my consent and reverting to the schedule specified in my contract. Swine, you'll be working the old schedule until I approve a new one. The work schedule is specified in the contract, all legal. Read the labor law. If you want to change the schedule, we can always review the contract. You want to change the schedule? Fine, then I want to change my rate of pay. A flurry of emails ensued. He sent them to me, and I responded, CCING HR and the owner. In the end, I worked as usual until Sunday, and on Monday, I came to work at 8 a.m. Howard asked me what was going on because Swine was ranting about me to everyone. It's important to understand that a good dispatcher in the service sector is a rarity. There are dispatchers for trucks, taxis, and tow trucks, but finding someone who can balance between plumbers and clients with their issues is difficult. I got along well with all my plumbers, and they started asking what was happening. I decided to maintain neutrality, and didn't reveal much. We got along great with these guys. In the middle of the day, I sent Swine an email explaining that there were several late calls. How long do I need to work? He replied, until the calls are completed. Great, I worked until 6:30 p.m. The same thing on Tuesday, but until 7 p.m. On Wednesday, I also sent emails every day, and Swine told me to stay. He only responded to me, and I sent the response, okay, with a copy to the management. By Thursday morning, I had already accumulated 39.5 hours, 38 of which were in the office, and an hour and a half on calls after work. By around 10 a.m., I sent an email again, CCING the management, detailing how many hours I had worked for the week and explained that at 12:30 p.m., I would have a total of 44 hours. According to Swine's directive of such and such a date prohibiting overtime, I had no choice but to go home. Before hitting send, I turned to Howard and said, "You might want to stock up on popcorn." Swine bursts into the office, demanding explanations. What the hell is going on? Well, Swine, I'm just following your directive. You said no overtime, right? Well, from 12:30 p.m., I'll already be on overtime. If you don't allow otherwise, I'll have to leave. So either cancel the ban on overtime, or I'm leaving. Decide. Swine was trapped. He had been ordered to cut overtime, and now he would have to pay me for overtime for half of Thursday, all of Friday, and Saturday, or sit at the dispatcher's desk himself. Work the fucking weekends, you shitty, __, you'll pay for this. Fine, I need that directive in writing, and I can't work on Sunday. You'll have to listen, you little shit. You don't get to tell me when I work. I tell you when you have to work, and you're working on Sunday. No, labor legislation clearly states that I am entitled to 1 day off per week. I can show you. Since I worked last Sunday and work all other days this week, I get this Sunday as a day off, all legal. Howard can't work on Sunday, and I can't, so I guess you'll have to. But my kid has a tournament on Sunday. You can't meet me halfway? Sorry, all legal. Swine was a real pleasure on Thursday and Friday, and my little spy pen recorded every word he said. On Monday, I come to work. It was November 26th. I was met by the company owner, HR, and Swine. HR and the owner wanted to know what the hell was going on. They got a message that I was being insubordinate and threatening to quit. Swine wanted to fire me. Although just 2 weeks ago, I had been a model employee. I explained everything and referred to the emails I had included them in. They asked where all this mess started, and I told them that Swine said he had been ordered to cut overtime, and he deducted from my pay hours that I actually worked. He overworked me, so I would come back to work during my break and planned for me to take a break 3 hours after the start of my shift. I laid out all the facts. The owner gave Swine a displeased look and said, "I never told you to cut overtime." They asked if I was ready to return to my previous work schedule. We can discuss this, but since this will be a significant change to my employment contract, we'll need to review it, including my rate of pay. You can return to those hours, and then we'll schedule a meeting. No thanks. If I return to the previous hours, you'll have no reason to schedule a meeting. First a meeting. And when we reach an agreement, you'll get the change of hours. Give us some time to think. We'll get back to you. All right. But you need to discuss this quickly because I'm taking the last 3 weeks of December off as vacation. Swine explodes right in front of the owner and HR, __, you're not taking a single fucking day off without my approval. I don't approve a fucking minute. I turn to the owner and HR. According to labor legislation, I am entitled to an annual vacation. According to my contract, I am entitled to 3 weeks. So far this year, I have only taken 2 days. I requested a vacation twice, and both times Swine denied me. I couldn't take a vacation after you fired Ashley and hired Swine because there were only 2 of us in the office. I am entitled to 3 weeks of vacation per year, and the year is almost over. The company policy is use it or lose it. So I'm using it. HR says, "We'll pay you compensation for unused vacation." I look at her and reply, "I disagree with your offer. I am entitled to a vacation and choose time, not money." She thinks for a minute and says, "We'll carry the vacation over to next year." I disagree with your offer. I am entitled to a vacation this year, not next. Swine interjects, "But Howard has already booked 2 weeks of vacation. I'm going to Florida with my family." You can't take a vacation. There's no one to manage the office. You're going to Florida? So you expect me to manage everything alone, work 7 days a week, while you send a letter with a ban on overtime? Are you fucking serious? I address the owner and HR again. "Listen, I've worked all year and am entitled to a vacation. Labor legislation states that you need to work a full year to be entitled to a vacation, and he's telling me I can't take my vacation because he's going to Florida. Although this guy has only been here 3 months. Am I imagining this? You told me to wait for a vacation until you find a third person. I point to Swine. There he is. I'm going to take the vacation I'm entitled to. No transfers. And if you want to review my contract, that can wait until the new year. And I walked out of the office. I don't know how the rest of the meeting went, but about an hour later, Swine started attacking me again, saying he lost $1,000 and now had to tell his kids that they wouldn't go to Disneyland. He called me all sorts of names. The next 2 weeks were hell. That __ was just awful. He called me names, said he wouldn't rest until I was out on the street, claimed I was the worst person he had ever had to work with. So I took my vacation. I didn't go anywhere, just relaxed, unwound, and spent time with my parents over the holidays. I came back in January, and there was a new guy in my place, and Swine, smug as ever, handed me termination papers. HR indicated that I was being laid off for some fault of my own, which was a plus for me. Where I live, if someone calls a former employer for a reference, the only thing that employer can legally disclose is the period during which the former employee worked and whether they are eligible for rehire. A few days after the beginning of January, Swine gets a phone call. "Hello, Swine. My name is Eric, and we're reviewing the author's resume. He listed you as his most recent employer. You're on speakerphone. What can you say about him?" Swine begins to explode, calling me all sorts of offensive names, claiming I was a terrible worker, lied about absences, and spouts all sorts of nonsense. "Hey, Swine. Recognize my voice?" He goes silent. "Yeah, __. I know your voice. Ever heard of law firms? Well, you're talking to a lawyer right now. This call is being made from their conference room. It was nice talking to you, Swine." The next call we made was to the owner to get the name of his lawyer. Some time passed, and we scheduled a meeting with the owner, HR, the owner's lawyer, and Eric the lawyer. Eric explained that I had started the process of filing a wrongful dismissal suit. This meeting was to discuss the possibility of settling out of court. We laid everything out, every letter, a timeline of events, and then the main highlight, a montage of audio recordings where Swine screams, threatens, goes on his tirades, and generally behaves like a pig. It was magnificent. Swine turned pale. The owner looked at him the whole time as if he wanted to erase him from the face of the earth. They asked us to step out for a few minutes. Eric and I went for coffee and laughed. After 20 minutes, they asked us to come back. The owner's lawyer explained that they did not acknowledge any liability or violations but, as a gesture of goodwill, were willing to offer me 3 months of severance pay if I signed a waiver of claims. Eric smiled, declined, and then played the recording from the conference room with Swine's recommendations. He also mentioned that he was there with 2 colleagues, all ready to provide corresponding written statements. Another break. We came back, and they increased the offer to 6 months. We proposed 2 years of severance pay. Eventually, we agreed on 15 months. Moreover, I was to receive a check every 2 weeks as if I were at work, based on the average number of my working hours over the last 6 months of my employment. And I had accumulated a lot of overtime during those 6 months. They even tried to insert a clause prohibiting me from working in the same industry while the agreement was in effect, but Eric noticed this and insisted on its removal. My skills are in demand, and it didn't take me long to find a new job doing the same thing, but for one of their competitors. It's great. I'm getting paid by both firms, saving up. Eric didn't demand some outrageous fee from me. And what about Swine? He was fired very quickly, and thanks to me and the owner's network of contacts, rumors practically crossed out his chances of being hired. As far as I know, he's still looking for work. I told my new employer to throw out his resume if it ever shows up. But if I ever get a call asking for a recommendation for Swine, All I can say is that I worked with him for 4 months in 2018, and not a word more. All legal. Well, that's where the story ends. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Watch our new stories here.